I finished Cujo.
Oh, what did you think of that?
I really enjoyed it. I think I missed missed the story, missed the stories, and it was I got the movie right after, and I really dug the movie. I really dug the movie.
The movie is actually really well done. It's a great King.
Yeah,
I think those early King adaptations are really well done because they're like, here's a best-selling author, here's a young director, just do whatever you want. And I think after that, they really tried to like zero in on the commercial success of this is just a King adaptation, and just didn't want to put any money into it. These other ones, like Cujo it's really well done, except for the mom from E.T. She just screams all the fucking time. Like, shut the fuck up. Like,
but I was so impressed with her too, and I actually didn't even. Yeah, I don't know. I was really on board for it. And then there's a special edition I got, and so there was commentaries and stuff. But and if you think about it, in some ways, Cujo, but similar to like a courtroom drama or something, like there's not a lot of different locations and stuff. So, it's at a certain point she's trapped in the car with the kid menaced by the dog.
Yep.
Here, I actually have notes for this.
Oh no! And for those listening, if this makes it to any audience, like, this continues the Castle Rock saga. So, like the same sheriff who was in the Dead Zone, he is still the
Bannerman.
Bannerman. Yeah. He is still the sheriff in Cujo of Castle Rock, the fictitious town that King has created, just like Derry. The namesake of the new Hulu show that is starting at the end of this month. And I love how King tells the Castle Rock stories through the perspective of the sheriff's department. And you'll see that as you're going through the chronology. This is another, like, Dead Zone, again, like it kind of tells that portion through the eyes of the sheriff's department. Cujo, it touches back to that sheriff's department. Needful Things is centered, like one of the main characters is a sheriff. It gets to the point that when you start interacting with Castle Rock, there's an aspect of the sheriff's department, that the Castle County sheriffs that it comes from. So Andy Clutterbuck, is he a minor character in
that? Sounds familiar.
And I think that he is a minor character in the Dead Zone. He's a minor character in Cujo. He is a deputy in Needful Things. Needful Things takes place explicitly in Castle Rock.
Okay. I haven't got.
He's the one that, like, I'm gonna make this shirt. This is gonna happen. So if this happens before, like, if this makes it out to any audience and this shirt ends up getting made, I'm gonna sue you. Just so you know,
it's the tattered shirt that the cannibal will wear before he goes completely shirtless.
But it's gonna say Andy Clutterbuck for Castle County Sheriff, because he finally makes it in that same Just After Sunset, that collection of short stories that the rest stop, that I forget what that story is, but Andy Clutterbuck, you finally find out, makes it, like, he becomes the Castle County Sheriff. And so I want to make a campaign shirt for him running for sheriff, because he's always the deputy. And then it's finally this short story that he is the actual sheriff. And you're like, poor Andy Clutterbuck, man, he's put up with like a serial killer, a killer dog, a fucking demon, like, Satanist who's like taking over his entire town, and he finally gets to be sheriff. And you're like, poor Andy Clutterbuck, like, he's seen all of it. Like, so man, that's awesome. So so you enjoyed Cujo, though? You liked it? Like,
yeah, I guess we could give it it's a pretty simple story that even I think I could synopsize, where it's centered around a family that lives in Castle Rock. You have hopefully it's not. I mean, you have a housewife, and you have a young, toddler aged maybe a little older than toddler. I don't know,
5 or 6.
Five. I think you're right. Yeah. 5-year-old kid. And then, an ad exec, maybe not exec, but like a guy, like a madman, I guess, from New York, who moved to Castle Rock to raise the family. And then, the wife is beautiful but frustrated and bored, and she ends up having an affair with the local kind of poet slash like tennis guy
slash
but not a local guy,
restorer. Like, doesn't he do like weird shit? And
he's sort of actually more like, he's not really central to the town, but maybe passing through. But so she's having an affair, and the guy's business, his local, his Castle Rock, he struck out on his own in Castle Rock from like the big city in New York to try to make a business with his colleague, and that's not going so well. And so there's some stressors in their marriage and whatnot, and they have a Pinto car that's not working so well. At the begin, and then this dog Cujo that becomes a central sort of a central character, but also kind of a metaphor for like their problems. They go to get the Pinto fixed at this kind of farm mechanic.
Anybody who's ever been in a small town, there's the one redneck guy that will fix your car better than anybody else for dirt cheap. Like, that guy exists.
Yeah.
I knew that guy in Rittman. Like, that guy exists in just about every small town. There's somebody who can fix your car better than anybody else, and he's only going to do it for beer money. And that's essentially
right.
who this guy is, right? Like,
Joe Camber. And
Camber, yeah.
They initially they go out to kind of meet him, and they meet his wonderful Saint Bernard dog, who's really good with his kind of 5-6-year-old son or whatever the hell. And but by the time they come back, by the time the wife comes back with the car to get it fixed by Joe Camber, that beloved Saint Bernard had like chased a rabbit into a bat's, into a cave where there are bats that bit him, and he's become rabid. So it's a rabid Saint Bernard,
120-pound dog. Like, he's a rabid,
a big
120-pound Saint Bernard dog.
Yeah. And then like a lot of that family had gone out of town, and basically that rabid dog takes out a neighbor and takes out Joe Camber himself. And when Donna and Tad, blanked on their last name, the mother and son, while the father's trying to fix his business out of town, and they're trying to sort out their broken marriage, she's got a lot of guilt. She feels a lot of guilt. The son has been he's been like having these nightmares and stuff that I think are kind of, he's sensing the tension in the house and projecting it into like a monster in his closet.
Even like it's manifested into a physical boogeyman that lives in his closet, right? Like, and
there's this great thing about the monster words. His dad comes up with the monster words that ward off monsters from hurting his son, and his son holds them to be very sacred and effective, when of course the father is just trying to placate him in some way,
to the point that they try to use them on Cujo, right? Like don't they?
Kind of, or at least the kid thinks that they'll protect him. And the wife feels that that she's being punished for her transgressions. Once in this broken down car, they go
and that's
Donna
crucial. Really, they're being punished for buying a Pinto. That's really
yeah. But they go they barely get the Pinto to the farmhouse to get it fixed, and no one seems to be around because the dog has gone rabid and killed them, and some of them are around town. But anyway, they become trapped in this car and menaced by this dog. And I guess spoilers, obviously,
for
always
a 40-year-old movie,
short drink, and book and all that. In the book, the wife, I hate calling it. Why am I calling her the wife? Donna gets. She gets mauled by Cujo. She gets bit, and she survives and is able to kind of kill him with a baseball bat. But Tad dies from like the heat and I don't know, panic attack, or you can't die from a panic attack, but
that's the book.
The kid dies.
In the movie, he does not.
He does not, yeah. So I really dug the book, and there's a thing in the book too. So the sheriff's office is involved, and it really opens that idea the boogeyman is real for the people of Castle Rock because of Frank Dodd, the serial killer that we know from the Dead Zone.
Yeah,
and so that's pretty cool. And then actually, I guess an implicit but sort of explicit thing to call back to our book club. I guess the Sheriff Bannerman sees the evil in Cujo as a manifest. He sees Cujo's. He sees that as he's like, Frank, this is Frank Dodd come back to haunt us. And actually, Bannerman dies. Cujo kills him.
Yep. This is also the book. Just for anybody listening, if this happens to make it anybody, this is also the book that is notorious for being known as the book that Stephen King does not remember writing. This is the book that he wrote it while he was in the literal peak of his addiction of drinking scope and alcohol and drugs and cocaine and anything that he could put in his body, he was essentially consuming. And then his family had an intervention. He went to rehab, and when he came out of rehab, there was a like proof of this novel that he supposedly did not remember writing, was Cujo.
That's what he says in his on writing book. He mentions that. He
was so fucked up he didn't remember writing Cujo. And I heard he also regrets that the kid dies. In the book.
That was part of what I learned from the behind the scenes of the movie, was that Stephen King was given the opportunity to write a script, and he did, and then I think it was like too long and stuff, but he in that script even didn't have Tad die. So then they went through. It was kind of similar to like something like Firestarter, and when I was like, there was a 1, 2, 3 of those like 3 novels and movies right around the same time. Like, they came out in short succession.
And Dead Zone and Cujo, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. And Cujo actually too it like breaks from that psychological, like Firestarter and is about what pyrokinesis in some ways, and the Dead Zone about telekinesis. And you got Carrie and all that. There was a lot of that through his early work, and he seemed to break free of it here,
which was and that was and I mean there is nothing supernatural about this story. It's a dog.
That's right.
It's a dog that's very powerful. It's big. It's a Saint Bernard who gets rabies, and by circumstance this mother and son get trapped in a standoff with this dog. There's at the root of the story, there is nothing supernatural to it. There are supernatural associations that characters make, like Bannerman makes this dog is Frank Dodd. That it just so happens this dog is happening in Castle County, and Frank Bannerman has to deal with it. That's his as a character reaction to this dog. But again, as far as a King story goes, there's not. Yes, the kid deals with the boogeyman. I think that if I remember right in the story, it is left ambiguous. You are left to make your own decision on if that boogeyman actually existed or not.
That's true. They kind of like little things like, the furniture is moved around. Oh, what's that? But we never really know.
But you're really left to make that decision on your own. But the root of the story is all tangible. It's a dog with rabies and a Pinto that won't start. And 120-pound dog with rabies could do a lot of damage easily, I remember the story causing a lot of problems for the breed Saint Bernards. Like when this,
Oh,
I remember my mom specifically telling me like there was a lot of stigma that came with Saint Bernards because of the movie Cujo. Which
I guess that does
the
make
breed is notorious for being a loyal and friendly dog, like not a vicious dog.
Yeah.
Which
is I think part of the interesting thing, and like
Yeah.
in the book, like there's a bit of an inner monologue for Cujo, and it and some of it's from his perspective at times, and
which
at first
is why I love the book a lot more than the movie, because you get those pieces, those small vignettes of like what Cujo is thinking, which is why King is a great storyteller, is he gives you all angles. You get to see all of it, like
right. So I have not very many notes I could run through about the movie.
Yeah, no, please. Let's talk about
just
him
for fun.
This is a great King's Corner.
Yeah, oh my god. Probably our best. So yeah, I'll just throw these out. Some of them might be points of discussions, others less.
Now,
so.
In all fairness, I have not seen this movie in probably 5 years. At the very minimum, it could be longer than that. So,
oh yeah, I definitely figured longer ago, and it's just one of those things. Like this is all stuff I missed, and I really one of my favorite things about the Stephen King pairing of like, I mean, there's the books and stuff are all great, but like the impact on popular culture, like this is all stuff I've been aware of, and then to get to see the movies, especially the movies that were produced around the time of the novel, so they're kind of period accurate.
Sure.
I love seeing the movies after, and it's great when they're faithful, because I have all that other subtext about what Cujo's feeling, all this stuff.
Sure.
And this was another one where they, similar to like Firestarter, they had in this instance it was a Stephen King script, but then they moved somewhere else, and then eventually by the time it was produced, somebody went back to the book. And so much of the dialogue is from the book. So most all the scenario is really very, very similar. So it's just like seeing it come to life. It's really fun for me. So some of these,
I feel like Pet Sematary is the last one of those. Like,
I'm so glad to hear that it is one of those. I'm glad to hear that,
because Pet Sematary came out in the 80s.
Yeah,
and Pet Sematary, the book, came out in the 80s. So I'm going to pair if they came out in the same decade, they're in the same time period. That's my opinion.
Yeah,
right.
And it's a little tricky, like with The Stand, because like that one that's a very 90s feel to that TV movie, where it's 70s book.
Yes, so and those don't match though. I don't think they match.
Yeah. Not as well as I'd like.
Running Man is kind of a stretch, but I feel like
that's my next one actually.
Yeah, Cujo. Well, the book and the movie are drastically different from each other.
I've heard that. Yeah, like almost have nothing to do with each other. I don't know how true that is.
Not fair. I don't think that's fair. I think they have the same premise, but they are both great in their own right. I love the Running Man movie. I love the Running Man book. They're like, the Running Man book really has the same feel of all the other Bachman books. They're unremorseless. Their heroes usually don't win. The Long Walk, he didn't win at the end. Like he's psychologically broken. Road Work, he didn't win at the end of that book. Like he created his problem, Running Man is a little different. He didn't create his problem. He definitely is reacting to the environment that he exists in. Both of those things, though, do a great service to the message they're trying to deliver, I think is the best way to say it. So
yeah. I got my Cujo here, and it's in less than perfect, but I do like the hardcover thing, and I enjoy that. Yeah. I like to see what I like all of it. Look at it, Stephen King.
Oh man, that's one of my favorite pictures of Stephen King, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I love that, like the bearded king, and like
he was looking like Coppola and making Apocalypse Now, and so obviously heavy from all the drinking that he was doing. And I love this cover too of Cujo, because once you get to that iconic scene of him coming out of the fog, it's it's so cool. And then they do a great translation of that for the movie. But
I remember really liking the adaptation of the movie compared to the book. I thought they did a great job with it.
It felt like the book. Like I literally finished the book on one day and I watched the movie that evening.
In all fairness, though, I thought Carrie was that way. I thought The Dead Zone was that way. I thought Firestarter was that way, and Cujo was that way. I think when you get to Children of the Corn, I think you'll feel. I felt that was that way too.
Yeah, that one was okay. I didn't love that. It was Salem's Lot was nice for me. You know, it was a TV
have not
movie,
watched
but
the TV version of that. I need to watch that. You know, honestly, like I have not been through Salem's Lot completely sober. I need to listen to that. Like I need to listen to it and just hear it as it is. That's one of those books that I feel like there's a number of King books that I feel like I have attempted multiple times, and for one reason or another, I just didn't make him through them, and to the point that I have other books, you know, where I've absorbed them in the same way. And Salem's Lot.
Yeah, that was only my second. Yeah, so I was like that was literally like, I liked Carrie. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Number 2 was Salem's Lot. So
I
remember it.
What else? What other King stuff you have?
Maybe I'll hit some of the. I mean, it's basically been Cujo for me, but so I'll hit some of the a few notes about it, and if something sparks, we can talk about it. Otherwise, it'll just be little tidbits. Came from Taft Entertainment, who also produced Monster Squad.
Nice.
The DP for the movie is Jan de Bont, who would go on. He's shot a lot of things, but he went on to like become a director. He directed Speed stuff.
Oh, okay.
He did some really great work in this movie. Is a debut of the kid, I think, from Who's the Boss. the kid child actor for this, whose name escapes me, was really excellent. A lot of the cast talked about like he was like working with a 30-year-old who just so happened to be whatever age he was. Let's see, Ted. Complicate. Oh, there's a nice adaptation touch where it complicates matters of the sort of infidelity by making Steve, who's the guy she's cheating on her husband with, like kind of like he plays tennis with Vic, Donna's husband. So like he's a known person in the family a little bit, so it makes that sort of betrayal extra and just helps with the kind of condensing things, but it kind of intensified things a little bit. But I thought it was a nice touch. And similarly, like they're able to do, I don't know, it's like basically the husband drives by and sees Donna and Steve on the street, like from afar, from the car. He sees that there's some kind of weird thing, and that's like his suspicion. Then the next scene, it corresponds a little bit more to something in the book. I don't know. They do a nice job where they do deviate of condensing things, I think. In fact, I guess I can't remember the script writer who. I could probably find out from the video box, but so
I can be doing IMDb while you're talking. Let me do it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so the screenplay probably Lauren Currier. I believe she wrote a pretty good adaptation when they decided to go back to the book, but she followed a lot of the subplots and all that, but she took a lot of the dialogue right from the book. But it was just too long. So she decided she did not want to be the one to edit it down. So they brought in someone, and I think a lot of the things that they did to condense things were actually more effective, especially for a movie. So she did a great job, and then someone came in to help kind of whittle down, just basically edit down the work that she did to bring it back to the book. But so I have this note about the Tad surviving, the boy surviving at the end. It really also plays off of if you're familiar with the novel and you're expecting him to die, it does seem like that could happen.
Yes.
Like it's basically just at the last moment that he doesn't. And so that came from the initial Stephen King draft.
Because he has asthma, right? Or something that like
there's something about the heat and the panic attack.
Heat and...
Yeah. They don't completely explain the medical, or if they probably do, and I just kind of shut down. But it's not like they establish he has asthma or anything like that. But there is a scene where she's like in the book and in the movie where the mother's trying to like keep the kid from.
I remember him like hyperventilating, like he's like, and she's like trying to get him to calm down and like,
yeah. And in the book, like basically, there's times where she's trying to get the courage or decide that she can actually make it to the house without being killed by the dog, and thus leaving her son to be killed by the dog. And at a certain point where she does decide that she needs to make that attempt, and she does ultimately like kill the dog and survive, Tad, her son, has passed away from whatever that other stuff was, another bout of it in the meantime.
And the implication, if I remember right, the implication also in the book is like she has rabies now because she like right, like because
and she does actually, and I think at least as far as the book takes it, she does survive, and she and Vic, her husband, decide to like stay together and try to make a go of it.
Right.
But you don't necessarily know what happens. But Stephen King told his biographer evidently that this is the one novel of his that he would rewrite and he would change that ending.
Oh, wow.
Which I thought was kind of interesting. Wow. I thought it was super well directed by a guy I'd not really heard of before, Louis Teague. And he went on to make one other movie with Stephen King called Cat's Eye, which I kind of heard of.
That's like an incestual, like.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, it's weird.
But what he described it as stringing together a bunch of the short stories in Night Shift through some sort of narrative device, which that seemed interesting to me. Wow. But probably good to know that not to expect too much.
Yeah,
Drew Barrymore's in this as well.
I watch that again. What is that called?
Cat's Eye. I think it came out in 1985.
Oh no, I'm so mistaking two different projects. Cat's Eye is awesome. That is nothing incestuous about that. Cat's Eye is really good.
Excellent. Yeah, it's interesting because that one like is an adaptation of.
I think is what that's called.
Oh, okay. And I think that's probably that era where it's maybe less faithful, like Lawnmower Man and stuff.
Yeah.
But so I realized too, in looking at some of the movie work through the StephenKing.com, you can kind of sort by date or various things. I was like, oh, I kind of skipped over Creep Show, or maybe I didn't skip over it in the chronology, but some sort of.
I think Creep Show was like his screenwriting credits, not necessarily novelizations. Like,
yeah, exactly. And I think it's like 90 or 82. I want to say
I would highly recommend Creep Show for two reasons. First off, he's writer on majority of those little vignettes that are in that, and second off, he stars in one of the vignettes.
Oh, cool!
Which is he plays like this really bumbling redneck, which is great, a great one.
So that stuff like coming up. I think in the chronology, I'm like kind of around 81-ish or something like that. So it all kind of works out nicely.
Nice.
But yeah, this dude Teague did some really cool stuff. Like they're really interesting shots, different perspectives. There's just one great thing about where he dramatizes the kids. You know, he thinks there's something in his closet, and he has to sort of make it. It's this kind of small beat in the movie, but they did a lot with it that I didn't know until I got to the behind the scenes. It just sort of had emotional impact, which is the idea. But like he turns off the light and has to run to his bed basically before like whatever the boogeyman gets him from under the bed.
Yeah.
And so what they do in the shot to give you that effect is that there's a small room set for most of it, but for the shot where he is trying to get to that space from the light switch to the bed, it's a much larger set, and he's got a long way to run.
Yeah.
So like kind of creative, dramatic things like that. There's an amazing shot where in the mother and the child have been it's after she's been attacked by the dog, but gotten back into the car, where she's just kind of losing it. and they found a way to basically in this Pinto like have a camera go 360 and start to just like spin faster and faster. And Jan de Bont figured out a way with the director through some sort of reflexive lens to do that, where the rig was basically on top of the car. But yeah, like really creative direction to both emphasize like the themes of the movie, but also to make like basically a one set thing of like people trapped in a car. Pretty interesting.
Make use of such a small space. That's the thing to consider. Is like the Pinto is not a big car. First off, that's part of the like oppressive nature of the situation. Is like it's a small car, and the majority of this movie, the majority of the tension of this movie takes place literally in the front seat of that car. You know, and their reaction to the dog while they're in the front seat of that car. I remember like, because a lot of the book and the movie plays out as this like war of attrition, right? Like, like Cujo is waiting them out because he knows like there's some like, there's almost that there is where the supernatural aspect plays in, is where like there's this almost like knowing of they can't just stay in that car. There's going to be a reason that they're going to have to come out of that car, whether it's
and it feels like some sort of reckoning or the way the set up.
And it just this great use of space. I like one of the scenes that stands out in the movie, which again I haven't seen it in so long, but like it's like on day 2 in the movie, and he's like, I got to go to the bathroom. I got to pee, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, let's open the door a crack and you're just going to pee outside real quick. And it's like, there's been enough lull in the movie that Cujo hasn't attacked. And you're like, you're just as invested as they are. Like, okay, we have long enough that this poor little kid can piss. Right. And it's the second they open the door, like, it's like terror again, you know, like, it just like ramps it back up again. And just, oh, man, really well done, really great. And man,
I have this note too, like where the book was based on, which I had heard but forgot. Stephen King kind of got the idea from having a similar experience going out to get his motorcycle fixed from like a backwoods mechanic in Maine who had this ominous looking dog, and then he kind of imagined that scenario basically that we're describing. Like, what if you were like stuck there and that dog was rabid, basically?
And this is me just tying it back to Castle Rock, Bannerman, Dead Zone. This is the scene that created, like, there's another scene in the Dead Zone that created where he's the door-to-door Bible salesman, and there's the dog in the like the dooryard of the Dead Zone that comes out and attacks him, and that's what creates. Who's the guy from the Dead Zone that like is Trump? Stilson. Yeah. Remember, he's the Bible salesman, and like
he
like
could be the Camber's farm in a way.
Yeah, and like none
it sounded
of the
like it
there, but there's the dog is there, and like he has that altercation with the dog again, like another parallel that like happens, you know.
Oh, that's very interesting. Actually, that had definitely not occurred to me. That's cool. The director was talking about real and imagined fear. What was that thing you were talking about in terms of the cannibal and the cannibalize? This versus this, or you'd
fear versus opportunity.
Yeah.
Am I going to be afraid of this, or am I going to see the opportunity in this situation? You know?
Yeah. And this director felt that this whole thing was like about real and imagined fear. So Donna, the bored housewife, she's kind of fears growing old, and she wants to be, she likes that she's desired by this, this young guy in town, a poet or whatever, tennis guy. And then her husband fears for financial security. Tad, their son, is sensing the tension in the house and is imagining, then that's kind of manifesting in his fear of these imaginary monsters in his closet. But by the end, they're unified as a family by this very real fear of death. And so it puts everything into perspective, all of those imaginary fears, as the director is saying, both for the characters, but a lot of our stuff in life is often things that we cook up and stew in our own brain. And so at the end of the book, and the family does kind of stay together, what's left of it, the husband and wife, but in the movie the kid doesn't die as well. So it actually ends in this freeze frame of that first moment that the father does make it. In the book, the father makes it to the farmhouse, but he's just a little bit too late and the son has died. But in the movie, like he just gets there in time, and you sort of, that's where they end their story. Director said is one of it is his favorite film that he worked on because he felt he had the best possible staff working in every department.
That's awesome.
And that definitely shows. This
is one of those movies. I grew up on horror movies. I grew up in a family that celebrated horror movies. This is one of those movies that is referenced a lot. I remember through life. I remember Cujo always having this like spot in our like echelon of like great horror movies. Cujo was one of those where it was just like, it just kind of pegged my mom, my older sister, my brother even, as like a good, it is just a great scary movie. You know, in the sense that it's not Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees. It's just it's really suspenseful. You can relate to the people. The premise is terrifying. I mean, again, that's a breed
it's so
of
plausible
dog.
in real life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
like,
it's a breed of dog that is notorious for being friendly and loyal and nice. Being the like, imagine if that like loyal and nice and awesome breed of dog just decided, no, fuck you. You know, like it could do that if it wanted to, but it doesn't normally. But in this story, it does. And that's terrifying. That's what makes it terrifying. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. The last note that I had is a little bit of a jokey type thing that came from the composer, which this is a little side note jokey thing, that the notes of the theme of this movie are similar and a couple times right on for the theme in Love Actually.
Yeah.
Like if you hear them side by side, so that's a little odd in retrospect. But the composer said that he thinks about Cujo as the story of a dog done in by two bats. First the animal that gives it rabies, and then the bat that ultimately is used to kill the dog. I was like, oh, that's kind of, I wonder if that was intentional kind of thing.
Well, and you know what? That's 100% accurate, because even in the book, Cujo is celebrated as like this amazing loyal dog, right? Like,
yeah, he's definitely like like you're not afraid of him after that first visit. And of course, as the audience too, you know, things are going to go south, but initially he's described his inner thoughts are all this noble thing, you know.
But even like every character that is killed by Cujo in the book Cujo can't believe they're being killed by Cujo. I remember even Bannerman was like, no, I know this dog. Oh, that's just Cujo. That's the, you know.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. He's sort of notorious as a good dog.
As a good dog. And that's kind of what allows him to just like take out as many people as he does, is because they have this like false sense of security with him as being a good dog, you know.
That's interesting too. Yeah.
And I mean, even so much as his owner and his like compatriot, who is his drinking buddy essentially. Don't they get taken out at the same time? Like both of them get taken out
in short succession. Yeah, those are two early victims. Yeah,
and
the first two. Yeah,
and it is this false sense of security of like, well, that's not Cujo. Cujo doesn't do that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Man, that's a good story.
I wasn't prepared to like it as much as I did. I mean, I figured I would, but the 1-2 of the kind of book being pretty cool, and then the movie being such a wonderful extension of that was like, it was real satisfying.